That is good. What's up, guys? DRJ here. Today I want to talk to you guys about gaming culture. So, two things before I get into this. Number one, I've done a few takes on this and it's run over, which is frustrating, but also good because it means I have a lot to talk about. It also means I need to upgrade my sort of shitty, whatever, video camera or whatever it is, the picture-taking device. I need to get a real camcorder, I suppose. The second thing is that I have a lot to say, and it's going to be broken up into two parts. First part is my sort of personal experience growing up, playing games, what I think of as gaming culture growing up, and then the second part will be more analyzing and breaking that stuff apart. So, get right into it. You know, when I was growing up and I got into Nintendo, I actually did briefly mess around with an Atari even before that. I think my dad had it. In my mind, it was something to do with my dad, not so much me. I think it had been released before I was born. But I'm 29 now, and Nintendo came out in the mid-'80s, so I would have been 4 or 5 when I first got my Nintendo, 3 or 4 maybe. Anyway, the first Nintendo blew me away. It was incredible. Some yahoo running around, stomping on dudes that vaguely resembled toadstools, smashing his head through blocks, and fireballs. Dear Lord, the fireballs. I mean, how cool is that? I used to go to bed every night and just pray that I had a dream where I was throwing fireballs just like Mario. That said, even at that age, you know, maybe in a few years, maybe a few years later, but even at that early stage in video game development, it wasn't necessarily socially acceptable, at least where I was at, to openly talk about video games. And you might be able to mention something like, yeah, I've got a Nintendo, but could you sort of dissect and analyze and talk about the best ways to get to, you know, like World 5.1? No. If you did that, people would be like, ooh, L7 fucking weedy. Anyway, I don't remember what movie that was from. Whatever the kids playing the baseball. People didn't really call people L7 weenies. Oh, they should. Anyway, so you start there, like I said, already starting to see sort of the social implications of playing games even at a very early age. And then you get, you move on a little farther down the line and, you know, PC gaming starts to become a little bigger. I mean, go back a few years again. PC gaming in its infancy, well, when Nintendo came out, it was even before its infancy. It wasn't even in its infancy yet. You know, Windows was like had just started its whole graphical user interface thing, a GUI. Computers really made no fucking sense, and only people that use them extensively, people with fucking degrees or whatever. You know, all those goofy buttons on your keyboard, page up, page down, all sorts of bullshit like that. That stuff was actually used like via DOS and whatever, real pain in the ass. So now, like flash forward a few years, more middle school, high school times. I graduated in 2000, if that gives you some perspective. PC gaming is starting to blow up. I'm playing Battlefield competitively, although more so after high school. People that play, you know, PC games are basically frowned upon for doing so, more so than console. Even at that point, before COD, consoles were still much more accessible, much more open to people playing games. As hard as it is to play PC games now, it was that much harder 10 years ago. You know, personally, it's fucking sad looking back at it. You know, I hid the fact that I played video games from everybody, which is why it's actually shocking to be sitting here talking to a fucking camera, putting this video up on YouTube, telling everybody about how I played video games. Like, I never would have believed I'd be doing that 10 years ago. No fucking way. But I am. But I didn't feel like I could admit that because people would be like, oh, you know, whatever, you're a loser with a skinny wiener, you play video games, you're a fucking nerd, get out of here. You know, ironically, I think today, you know, the guys that would have been saying that stuff 10 years ago are the guys that are, you know, fucking just can't stop talking about COD, but I'll leave more of that for part 2. One of the other facets to gaming culture that I felt was integral growing up was arcades. Arcades I thought were really, really cool, and something that's too bad that I think most gamers don't get to see today. Fighting games like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Killer Instinct were huge. And on like a popular night at the arcades, you might have 30, 40 people waiting there to play. You know, they sort of throw their quarter on the screen, and that marks, you know, who gets to play next. It was winner stays, loser pays. So if you won that match, you didn't have to pay again. You know, you saw some dude that had like 30, 40 wins on his record there. He'd been playing for the last couple hours. You're like, Jesus, this dude's a fucking ball banger. Watch out for this guy. What was I say? I mean, just arcades were really, really fun. The other thing I think is was a big part of the culture, I suppose, was shit talking. Shit talking obviously probably got its roots, you know, with consoles, telling people how terrible they were. You know, your friend, your brother, your sister were sitting right next to you. And then, you know, gradually as computer games started to become more popular and playing online started blowing up, shit talking took on this whole new dimension, which was you could be, you know, anonymous and tell somebody how god awful and terrible they were. What it meant was that basically instead of like telling somebody that they were not so good, now you could just like full blown dump truck load on them all sorts of horrific things you would never say to somebody in real life. It was a lot of fun. It was probably like the single biggest part that I miss about competitively gaming. And in fact, we used to joke around oftentimes that the games took a back seat and were secondary to the actual forums themselves. You know, I don't know if I was more excited about going over to the forums and posting afterwards or actually playing the match, which was hysterical. God, it was so much fun. It's something I still do occasionally and still want to do today, but I think that what I'm doing today is a lot different than what I was doing 10 years ago. And, you know, convincing people as to what makes good games good or bad games bad. The best way to go about doing that is probably not haranguing somebody for being terrible, whether or not they are indeed terrible. But those were the good old days. Real quick, a little story here. Basically went over to this guy's house, met this dude playing soccer, and he invited me over to play Halo. Thought he was setting me up to like kick my ass or something like that. He brought over a friend who brought over a friend. They thought they were pairing up to two shitty players there, and turns out both myself and this other guy had played some Halo, and I wiped the floor with this asshole, and he ended up kicking me out of his house because I talked too much shit. Apparently, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I just feel like it's, to me, like it's ingrained as part of like the gaming culture. It's maybe ideally it would be more of a thing where people can laugh with each other versus at each other, but I still feel like it's there, and I think that turning games into this very sterile, confined, politically correct environment, I'm just not a big fan of that. I think that does more harm than good, and I really enjoy the gaming as it happened then, and enjoy it as it happens now. One of the things I want to talk about, I'll have to touch on this real quickly because I don't want to run out of time again, is the negative view of basically younger gamers and how I've seen that. My take on that as far as somebody who grew up playing games and still plays them today. Like I said, I'm 29. I think the younger gamers in today's day and age have a reputation for oftentimes being the ones that are both the most skilled, as in the only players that can play games are the guys that are still in fucking middle school, and two, are the ones that talk the most shit. So first of all, anytime someone's going to be really good at something, they're going to be spending the most time with it. Spending a lot of time doesn't guarantee you'll be great with something, but rarely will you find somebody who excels at something and doesn't spend a lot of time doing it. That said, I think that a lot of the guys out there that, you know, make some sort of defamatory remarks like you must be 12 because of your scores, the way you're talking or whatever, I think that, like I said, as someone who's 29 and playing games as much or more than ever before is simply not the case. I think it would be really difficult if you had, you know, a wife and kids and shit like that, and a 9-to-5 job. Thankfully, I have none of that. But I think that what I see happening, at least on my YouTube comments, is, you know, I see very thoughtful, very insightful, well thought out comments, people talking to each other, responding to each other's questions, and especially the messages that I get to. I know the majority of my YouTube subscribers are probably still somewhere around the high school age, either going in, inside, getting out, somewhere around there. And if that's the case, you know, the younger gamers can't both be insightful and totally fucking moronic at the same time. I think that it's an easy scapegoat. That said, I know that we've all seen like the younger gamers, seen the 12-year-olds that have come into lobbies doing their version of shit talking, which is just running their mouths constantly, which can get annoying. But I think that they're the exception rather than the rule. And like I said, I think that my experience has been very positive thus far with younger gamers. And I think that one of the dangers of growing older, I think, is actually discounting what younger people have to say, or being like, oh, you're too young to know what the fuck it is you're talking about. Because while I may have been more abrasive, whatever, when I was younger, that there was nobody out there who was better or more experienced at playing, you know, competitive FPS games, or very, very few individuals, I guess I should say. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut it off here for now with that, and then in the second part, like I said, I'm going to talk about how COD has affected not only gaming, but especially specifically gaming culture, what it means to be a gamer, and where we're going in the future. So stay tuned. Let me know if there's any comments, criticisms, critiques, anything you guys want me to touch on, and I'll do my best to fit those into part 2.